Welcome to Sproutcast, where we speak with changemakers, social innovators, and entrepreneurs about how to make the world a better place.
Tickets are now available for Sprout Summit 2016. This year we're in Melbourne on the 29th of July. Check out sproutsummit.com for more information or to sign up to our newsletter for the latest program updates and announcements. We hope to see many of you there and that you have the opportunity to meet other Sproutcast listeners and hear from more amazing speakers on doing business and doing good.
And now, here's your host, Julia Duffy.
Welcome back to Sproutcast. My name is Julia Duffy and today we're speaking with Steph Woollard, founder and CEO of 7 Women. In this episode, we chat about international development, grassroots change making, and the challenges involved in operating an organisation over 2 countries. Welcome to Sproutcast, Stephanie.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to start by asking you, Steph, about your first exposure to the non-profit sector, or perhaps to some of the issues in society or in the world that the non-profit sector is dealing with. Kind of what was your first exposure to that, and how did it inspire you to move on to do what you're now doing?
Okay, for me it started with a situation that I saw of injustice in society, and it was actually firstly in Australia when I went on a caravanning trip with my mum and dad in Year 9. They took me, my brother and sister out of school, and we went in a caravan up the east of Australia and up the centre of Australia and down the east coast. And I was really inspired by the Indigenous people that we met, but also kind of disturbed by the violence that we heard at night when I was staying in the caravan parks in some of these different towns going up the centre of Australia. And it made me curious and start to wonder about why are these people behaving like this, and what are the social issues that we have here in Australia? What's the cause of some of these issues? So I went on then to stay after high school in a few Indigenous communities that I had the privilege of being able to go on these trips, one with an anthropologist from my university, La Trobe at the time, up to a tiny remote community in Doingy. It was called Doingy and now it's been renamed, but in East Arnhem Land. And that gave me a lot more exposure and understanding around some issues in these Indigenous communities, and also enriched my life a great deal from the experiences I had and the people that I met in this community. So that was the first experience. And then I did the Remote Communities Holiday Program with the Red Cross in Daly River. And that also impacted my life a great deal. But from both of these experiences, I couldn't see a way forward for me to be able to contribute and make a difference at that time, at that age. So I was curious after that then to see a developing country and see poverty in its real form, and how people lived and what were global issues of poverty. So that ended up taking me to Nepal with Duke of Edinburgh, which had an arm called OzQuest at the time. And I went with a group of 30 people and we stayed there for about 3 months doing mainly building in 2 different remote village areas. And I then went on to lead tours for Duke of Ed, groups of architects. And through that process, I also got very curious and learnt a lot about how Western people with good intentions impact the community with the different ways they try to help people in different communities. So to answer your question, my 7 Women began on the back of one of those trips when I stayed on and the group went home. The group of architects left. And a friend of mine, Cecile, said to me, "Steph, I know you're really interested in social work and the community. Do you want to come and meet my sister? She's got these 6 other women who are all physically disabled together in a tin shed, and they're not making ends meet at the moment. They're really struggling. Do you want to come with me and meet these women?" So I went with him then in these tiny back alleyways of Kathmandu, and we ended up at this tiny tin shed of 7 women that were kind of operating out of this tin shed, and all looked quite visibly and obviously disabled. And I heard through their stories that because of the way they looked, they were very socially isolated, and that there was a belief that if a person is disabled in this life, it meant that they were evil in a past life. So these women were trying to make candles at the time and sell them, but because of this stigma, weren't able to sell hardly any to cover their basic daily needs. So I suppose that's where my journey began, because, and that was 10 years ago now. I was 21. So that was a point in my life where I saw an injustice, and I met these women and heard their stories and thought to myself, how can I, as one person, make a difference in this situation?
And so 7 Women, your organisation, has kind of been inspired by this experience that you had, but I understand it's also still closely connected with that community and the women experiencing the hardship that you've been talking about. So could you tell us, for people who might not know, a little bit about what your organisation does, and I guess kind of the connection between Nepal and then people back in Australia?
Sure. So the organisation was born then with these 7 women, and I revisited the tin shed every day for about 3 weeks after that, and it's now turned into an organisation which focuses on economically and socially empowering marginalised women in Nepal, and we've managed to empower over 5,000 women now to earn an income for themselves and learn. The main programs we run are literacy, skills training and income generation. And that actually began with 200 Australian dollars. I had $200 left on that trip of my kind of travel money that I'd saved. And I discussed with the women, what can we do with this money that would have, a lasting impact, or, I didn't want to just give them money because I knew that would disappear quite quickly. So we paid for 2 trainers to come and train them in a skill, which was knitting in the beginning, because a lot of the women knew how to knit anyway, but just needed to refine their skills to be able to make kind of products that I could be able to sell. I would be able to sell in Australia. So that's how it began in the very beginning. And I remember shoving the initial 12 items in my suitcase and carrying it back to Australia, and then thinking, where am I going to sell these? So I set up a stall at my university at La Trobe and recruited the 2 first volunteers to help me sell the products in the beginning. Very unsuccessfully. We didn't sell any products on the first market stall. So then I started to make designs that I thought Australian people would find attractive and like to buy.
So I'm really interested to know, Steph, about the process of starting the organisation of 7 Women, because I'm sure a lot of people have had a similar experience where they've seen perhaps a social injustice or an environmental issue that they feel passionate about and don't necessarily know how to get started to bring a great idea they might have into fruition to help solve that problem. How did you move from the initial stall at your university to actually having a kind of proper, fully fledged organisation?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it took a long time. In the beginning, we developed as slowly as we needed to, and there were a lot of challenges in the beginning. I didn't know Nepalese at that stage, only a few different words, and the women had the woman Sangeeta, who was leading that centre and had the other 6 women together, spoke broken English. So, and the other women didn't speak any English at all. So there was a communication barrier, and there was also the technology barrier. When I went back to Australia, the emails weren't easy to send, and there's electricity cuts in Nepal, so it wasn't easy to contact the women. I think 8 to 12 hours a day electricity cuts, so it wasn't always easy for them to connect and call me to report on what was happening or ask about developments and things. So it was very slow at the beginning, and we took it step by step, and none of us knew where it was going to go at the time, but our immediate focus was, how do we get a place for these women to live that's comfortable, and a proper bathroom for them to shower and wash themselves properly. So that was my immediate aim, raising enough money here by selling their products to fund that. And once we had funded that, it was about more training and products more products that we could sell here, to raise more money to kind of train them in skills and then help them start to gain skills to earn their own income, to become independent and raise money so they could pay for all of their own basic needs, and the ones that had children to pay for their needs as well. And then as it was growing, there were more and more women who were coming to the Tiny Tin Shed who had heard about it through other women asking for work. And what I realised was there was a lot of women in need there, and both disabled women and also single mothers, widows and domestic violence victims that were wanting to engage and join in this work. So we could only grow as much as we had money to at that time. So that kind of dictated my movements and my developments here in Australia in asking different groups for donations and trying to sell as many products as we could. But I always wanted to maintain kind of control over where it was heading and how slow it was developing. And I thought the best way to do that would be to get all of the money that we raised through our own efforts, so through selling the products, because that would give both Sangeeta in Nepal and me here always an understanding over supply and demand and how many products we needed to make in Nepal and sell here to be able to fund the vision. So, and also I'd seen a lot of corrupt organisations in Nepal, and the ones that were corrupt were based on welfare and giving things for free, and the ones that were successful were based on capacity building and empowering the people. So I wanted to always make sure that the power was with the women and they were in control of how much they were raising when, because sometimes when organisations get funding, they can lose their way and their vision of what they're actually, their mission and their purpose of existence. So I wanted to make sure that didn't happen with what we were doing.
Excellent. And is the mission of your organisation and your vision something that was carefully kind of incorporated in your organisation when you did kind of formally establish, say, a constitution and that kind of thing? Has that been something that's been helpful for you in protecting your organisation's mission?
I don't think we've ever needed to protect it, because once we were clear, we were very clear, and we've stuck to that ever since. But it was a great process to go through to register it when we were ready as a proper incorporated charity and be very clear on what we do and what we don't do, and which is the economic focus, economic empowerment and social empowerment, and the three main programs that we run, which are literacy, skills training and income generation. So it was a great process to go through to register for that purpose, and also to then formally have volunteers helping and them have each individual roles that they assist with, and also for in terms of donations, which we've only started to kind of seek donations for seed funding our new replication of the model in Kathmandu in rural areas in the last 3 years. So that's we've had a fantastic investor back us and support us over the past 3 years to develop seed funding, just to develop new programs. And incorporating our organisation was obviously necessary for this, and the tax deduction that we've got to seek larger funding.
Excellent. And so the process of incorporation, was that something that you sought much advice on? I understand that a lot of people kind of maybe don't realise how much is involved in that process when they first get the idea of perhaps starting a charity.
I had absolutely no idea how to go about that. So I needed a lot of advice from the right people, and I was always careful who I asked advice from, but I was lucky enough to have some great mentors around me that knew all this stuff and had been through it before. So a mentor and advisor to me, Glenn Scott, who's an accountant, really backed me up when I was ready to incorporate, and we had a fundraising dinner to raise the funds to do that, because the legal fees can be quite expensive, and to do that. And he came to the lawyers with me to ask what was entailed in doing that and what was entailed in getting DGR status. And I felt so overwhelmed when the lawyer told me about the DGR status. I felt like I was going to cry, thinking, how on earth am I going to have the patience to get through all of that? And she said, and then when you finish going through all of that, there's a very slim chance that you'll get it. And I thought, oh my goodness. So it was just step by step with that process as well. And we eventually got there, and there's reporting requirements when you're registered as a charity, which everybody probably knows, that you need to be on top of as well and understand what you need to report to who, depending on the model that you choose. So for us, we chose to go with the Incorporated Association model for our Seven Women charity, because it was more flexible to what we were wanting to do. And I never wanted to register a model or because there's a few different kind of things you can choose from. Register an entity that restricted our ability to adapt and do different things. Like now, for example, is our 10-year anniversary, and we're about to launch the next chapter of Seven Women in Australia, actually, up in Cairns. So in a few Indigenous communities that we're going to be working in. And so that's something that I always wanted to kind of remain flexible, so we could adapt in future if we changed our location or focus. Because I knew that the Nepal project would be sustainable one day, and that we'd kind of go on to do other things. Does that make sense?
Yes, excellent.
Yeah. Good.
So the growth and continued sustainability of your organisation is something that I definitely wanted to touch on, because I know that particularly in the area that you're working in, and you've touched on this yourself, in aid and development, sustainability can be a real challenge. How are you able to distinguish your organisations from some of the others in operation in terms of ensuring that you were able to continue to support these women, but also making their options more sustainable too, instead of a kind of short-term goal?
So I think there's two different things in that question. One is my own financial sustainability here as it gets up and running, because we didn't have enough money in Seven Women, and I didn't want to take a wage from Seven Women in the beginning, because it takes a while to get funds in it and everything like that. And I still don't take any money from Seven Women, and no one does here in Australia. So that for me was a challenge. I did a lot of kind of different jobs. I had 6 different part-time jobs at one stage, doing different, babysitting and all that sort of thing while we were getting it up and running. And then I started a wood-fired pizza business with my brother called Fire Up Australia that we've sold now. So I was doing corporate Christmas parties and events and festivals, making wood-fired pizzas, and I just thought, I can't handle this any longer. I'm so not passionate about making pizza. So then we sold that, and around that time was when I started my tour company, which now funds me to do the work from Seven Women. So that is how I resolved that issue that I had. And then in Nepal, it was just kind of step by step, how are we going to make enough money in Nepal to run the program, so it's not always dependent on me and the team here selling products in Australia. And we've managed to do that. So by creating local income streams, and one of those is actually we've created cooking classes. We get a lot of visitors at the centre in Kathmandu. I've got a big network here, and a lot of people have wanted to go and see the work of Seven Women. And so I sat down with Anita, who's the head of our country director for the headquarters in Nepal, and we worked out, we thought, let's start some classes that people can come and participate in to generate a local income. So we've started cooking classes led by the women at the centre, which is great for their confidence to teach one of their skills and traditional dishes to international visitors. They feel very good about doing that, and making fair trade products, and then teaching visitors a bit about fair trade as they make the product. taught by the women. And then we do Nepalese classes so they can pay to have a, 101 Nepali course. So that's been a great income for us. And the women also the other products we sell are school uniforms that the women make to local schools around Nepal, both in Kathmandu and remote villages, and also pads, sanitary pads for women they make out of material. And we sell them to different organisations that are working in different locations in Nepal.
And as the organisation has become a little bit more established, and as you've said, you've been able to dedicate more of your time to it, how has your role changed? And I guess also bringing on a lot more partners and volunteers, how have you kind of adapted to this developing role and I guess a lot of leadership responsibilities, really?
So that's a really interesting question because we have basically started from the ground up, and in the beginning it was very hands-on in developing the program, and the women that I have been working with have never held a pen before, so it's very kind of starting from zero, and teaching them how to plug the USB into the computer, teaching them how to turn the computer on, introducing them to a computer that they'd never kind of seen before or been familiar with how to use. So that took a very long time and a lot of my kind of time and energy in Nepal, in training and developing the programs. And now over the years, it's really they're quite capable, especially the staff members who train new women when they come to the centre. So my role's been, I've stepped back and now I'm in communication with our country director, Anita, probably every 3 or 4 days, and she just bounces ideas off me and tells me about people that have visited the centre and opportunities that brought to us. And she knows that she can call me anytime to ask me questions that she has or ideas that she wants to develop, and that I'll be an ear to listen. And my experience working in community development over the past 10 years, I feel has been valuable in being a sounding board to her. But she's unbelievable, and she's really passionate about empowering women because she's one of 6 women in her family. She only has sisters and has experienced a lot of discrimination because of that as well. So her heart's really in it, and she's really leading the vision forward now. I'm just supporting her all the way.
Excellent. So you've kind of almost quite stepped back from a leadership role. Is that just in Nepal, or what's your role like in Australia?
So my role now is to make sure that we've got enough funds to seed fund our new projects. We've got a documentary being made about us this year because it's our 10-year anniversary. So I've been getting funding for that documentary on a crowdfunding platform, which I'd love to mention at the end if anyone would love to fund that, because it's basically going to be a powerful resource for us to fundraise in future to seed fund our new projects. So that's up at the moment, and that's probably my main focus. And working with the volunteers here in Australia to sell the products. We wholesale our products to over 100 shops around Australia, and that's a lot of work picking and packing and taking orders and getting them sent out on time. Also doing all the back end for the tours. A lot of people are interested to come to Nepal and see our work and come on our hand development tours where we visit different places in Nepal. So that's my main role now here in Australia. And also all the developments that are happening now, moving forward with the next chapter of 7 women, working with a few amazing Indigenous women who are very influential in their communities in bringing enterprise to a few communities up north.
How many chapters do you have in Australia now? Is this the first?
Yeah, this is our next kind of big focus.
And that's the first one kind of like separate from the original one you created in Nepal?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So are you finding that there's kind of different challenges associated with this chapter, or does the fact that you've kind of done it before make a big difference?
I think it makes a big difference because I've seen what works in Nepal, and that needs to be adapted to each different location, obviously. But I want to remain focused on women, because when women get together and discuss what needs to change and come up with ideas, I've seen amazing things happen, and I've seen the same thing here in Australia. So I'd like to keep the focus on women, but be flexible enough to not be focused on literacy, and there will be a focus on skills training and income generation more for the next chapter, I think.
Over time, what have been some of the other kind of more general challenges that you've faced? I know we've covered a couple, but are there any that you think people might not even think about before they get into your position, and that you kind of wish you'd known before you'd started?
Tricky question. I think the main advice I would have from my own experience is getting a board together for an organisation that is established here. Make sure I kind of initially, because I've never set up a board before at the time of doing it, I got advice to get kind of an accountant, a lawyer, people in big positions who have big networks on the board that can kind of grow 7 women, and that probably wasn't right for us at the time. We just needed someone, a board there to kind of support the vision and continue to grow at our own pace. Mm-hmm. So my advice would be to kind of select people that you trust and that are there for the right reasons and are going to be there to support you and back the vision and raise questions and, challenge you if they need to on certain things. But they're there to support the work and they believe in the work that you're doing. Because I think sometimes if there's a board here that are not familiar with the programs or the work that's being done, it's a bit tricky. So I think that, it would be great and this probably happens in most organisations, but the board members to actually see the work on the ground that's being carried out and be inspired by that, and develop the organisation here at the same pace that's needed and with the sole mission of advancing the work and the mission of the organisation. So that would be my advice. And we've got an incredibly supportive board now that are very hands-on, which a lot of people kind of warned me against having a hands-on board, but it works really well for us. Our meetings are basically action-oriented. What has everyone done the last month? What do we need to do before the next board meeting? And then we get together again and discuss what's been done, what still needs to happen, and we go away and get it done. So that would probably be the main one for me. And patience. Need a lot of patience working in an international or any kind of, issues, societal issues and not-for-profits. There needs a lot of time to solve some of these issues and make societal change, not just kind of giving stuff for free is easy and fast, but to create this change. We're only seeing some amazing impacts now, 10 years later, after our work in the beginning, because different women need different time to transform, and when they start to make an income, the different changes occur in them, and then they become more confident. So only now we're beginning to see women in the remote villages actually group together and go to local government and demand for their rights and ask the government, what are you supposed to be doing in our community? What assistance can you offer? We need this, we need that. Can you support us with that? So it's that the patience and kind of being in it for the long term requires a lot of commitment and energy and hard work. And there's been a number of times along the way that I've thought, how much more can I take of, things not happening, or with all the challenges in Nepal of the electricity and communication channels not working properly. It needs a lot of commitment. And I think if I knew how much commitment it would have taken in the beginning, I probably wouldn't have started. I don't know if that's fair to say, but it's taken a long time, but only now we're reaping huge benefits from it and having a huge ripple effect in the community in Nepal.
Excellent. And before we move on to the final questions, what you just said then really makes me think about the impact that your organisation is having, and that impact, social impact, is definitely something that is really being talked a lot about in the sector at the moment, especially in terms of how you are able to measure your impact. Is that something that you've been thinking about, and what do you do with that information when you have measured your impact?
In Nepal, we're very connected to the women in Nepal that we work with, and we've been able to kind of remain connected and stay small and effective and tight with our organisation and the impacts that are being created. And we kind of measure that in terms of social empowerment and economic empowerment of the women. So there's all the quantitative stuff that we keep records of, and the qualitative stuff as well, which is equally as important, the changes that the women are feeling and the confidence levels and what they're being able to do now that they've earned an income. So, but they're the two main ways that we record the impacts, and we meet once a month with the women to ask them how they're going and what changes they've noticed, and do they have any new ideas for their future? Are they wanting to start a business, and how we can support them in doing that, all of that sort of stuff.
Excellent. And are these results something that you communicate with supporters in Australia? Is that something that you find people are really excited to hear about when they engage with you or make a donation?
Yeah, I think most people, because we do a lot of market stalls selling our products, so most people don't want to be overloaded with information. They're just happy enough to know how many women are being benefited and what the main programs are, and they'll ask questions if they want to know specifics. But our main donors, we go into details and tell them about all the impact reporting and what we're seeing happening in the different places that we're working.
So I wanted to end off today by asking you about, I guess more generally in the sector, if you're aware of any other organisations or programs that are doing something really exciting that people may not know about that you'd like to share.
Okay. Yeah, there have been a lot of organisations that we've worked with in creating International Women's Day events and different events to advocate for the issue of empowering women. One organisation that's had an impact on my life has been Care International, which is an international well-known NGO, but I had the privilege of going to work with them for 2 months last year in Myanmar, and they were really generous to me. They allowed me to go out and see all of their projects with the different project village managers, and it was really effective grassroots change that they were achieving. And they also work at a policy level as well. So that's probably the organisation that I would mention there that's doing fantastic work in the space.
Just to finish up, how can people find out more about what you do or get in contact?
Well, we have a Facebook page called 7 Women, and all of our crowdfunding information, the trailer for the documentary that's coming out is on that page. And the tour company is handsondevelopment.com.au, and our 7 Women website is 7women.org. We have our documentary screenings that are being hosted all over Australia. So if anyone's interested in hosting a screening of the documentary, they can get in touch with us on the website as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking with me today, Steph. I think that you've really had such a fascinating journey with your organisation that I'm sure people will learn so much from. So thank you so much for your time.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
One more quick thing before you go. Tickets are now available for Sprout Summit 2016. This year we're in Melbourne on the 29th of July. Check out sproutsummit.com for more information or to sign up to our newsletter for the latest program updates and announcements. We hope to see many of you there and that you have the opportunity to meet other Sproutcast listeners and hear from more amazing speakers on doing business and doing good.